25 days and 10 hours to the D-Day, and as the clock ticks, so does our interest peak. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Fekla Wilkie and we are reaching you live from Abuja. This is the Ballot. It's great to have you join us tonight. For the next couple of days, I will be standing in for the regular host of the Ballot, Nandi Odipo. And tonight, we'll be having an interesting conversation with our guest on the show. But before we get to that, let's bring the news highlights for today. And with just a few weeks to the 2023 general elections, effective observation of the process in engendering a free, fair and credible elections has become imperative. This has inspired a roundtable conversation amongst critical stakeholders chaired by Yaga Africa. The roundtable talk also had representatives from other civil society organizations.
Concise information on the electoral process to improve turnout as well as the quality of public participation.
The APC campaign train makes a stop in Uyo as the presidential candidate Bola Ahmed Tinubu urged electorate in the state to vote in his favor, assuring the repositioning of the country for greater prosperity.
We will be the deep sea ball.
And still on the 2023 elections, the European Union Observer Mission on Nigeria's general election has deployed 40-man long-term team to support Nigeria to achieving credible elections. Provisions has also been made on a short term with addition of another team towards the success of the elections.
Characteristics, and we are cognizant of all of those characteristics.
All eyes seem to rest on Nigeria as the country goes to the polls this month. Considering its big brother role in promoting democracy and good governance in Africa, it is no surprise that the country's election tops the agenda as ECOWAS Parliamentary holds its first extraordinary session in Guinea-Bissau.
Tirelessly to ensure that there is peace. First of all, there is peace in Nigeria.
And now let's move on to the main business of the day. And my guest is a representative of one of the leading contenders in this year's presidential elections. She is the National Chair Campaign Secretary for the new Nigeria People's Party, NNPP. And we have with us Honorable Folashade Aliu. I warmly welcome you to the Ballot.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. So now, without much ado, we'll just go with the questions.
Great.
Now, we've listened to your principal, that's Dr. Rabiu Kwankwaso, go from state to state, campaigning and all of that. Some keen political observers have said that his manifesto is a bit mundane and a commonplace. So the question here is, what makes him stand out? What are those key elements in your manifesto that stands him out as a contender for the 2023 #1 position?
Well, thank you so very much for that nice question. If you happen to go through our manifesto, you'll see that we're primarily people-centric. If you consider the unity of the country, you consider security, the economy, the foreign affairs, and a whole lot of things. But the thing that stands out clearly in the whole of the manifesto is that we are bringing governance to the grassroots. We have a program in our manifesto that talks about community participation and reorientation. If you want to talk about the unity of this country, for instance, You need people to be able to come together, to be able to accept and respect one another at the first instance. Then you begin to talk about issues. If you want to talk about the economy of this nation, you want people to participate at the level where they are in their domain. And what this program does is that it allows people at the grassroots to understand what's going on with governance at the center and how they can participate, how they can be part of it. For instance, we are talking about education. We're talking about the fact that we're going to build 500,000 classrooms across the nation. People will ask, how do you want to achieve that? You can do the sum of those simultaneously. Engaging the community. When you engage them in the process or processes of it, they own it. So it becomes our project, not the federal government project. If you talk about health care, for instance, we're promising that at least every other ward will have a primary health facility. And then you engage people from the community to be nurses, midwives, nurses assistants, doctors, physicians, and the rest of it. And then they feel like they own it. And we think that at this point in our journey as a nation, people are disconnected. So that's just one of it, and I will mention some other things as we go on.
Okay, still speaking about the manifesto.
Yes.
Would like to have clarity on your plans for climate change. I mean, it would seem that your party's manifesto is not exactly reflecting, climate change in its entirety, given the expediency and the fact that it's a necessity, given the floods and all of the threats we have to food security and all of that. How would you respond to that? How come climate change is not well captured in your manifesto?
Well, you will understand that when you are at the point where we are as a nation at a very critical crossroad, you have to look inwards first. And we understand, the soil erosion in the southeast. We understand, the issue of the waters in the south, contamination and the rest of it. We understand what is happening in the north and every other place. Climate change is very important. Our environment is very important. What we laid a lot of emphasis is that let us protect what we have first.
I don't think food security is one of it?
No, food security is one of it, but I'm talking about the climate change. That is to say, you remember I was saying, let's engage ourselves. Let government not to be, allow government to be closer to the people. If we're talking about climate change and we're still throwing our trash in the gutters that's supposed to, the drainages that's supposed to protect us from flood, we're not helping one another. So in terms of climate change, we did mention a few things, but we do not lay a lot of emphasis on the global climate change. We're starting from us, which a lot of government or people in government has not been doing. Because if you want to match up with the rest of the world, you've got to start from inward out. You don't start from outside inward, it's inward outside.
So can you tell us?
Okay, in terms of food security, we have a very extensive and very comprehensive plan on food security, which boils down to agriculture and the supply chain. We talked in our blueprint, we call it manifesto blueprint, whichever we interchange it, but we talked about the fact that people must be able to go to their farms first, which is, the security we're talking about. We're talking about agricultural communities. We talk about commodity boards, because all of these things are very important. When you go out there and you put a lot of effort on your farm, when it comes out, when the produce comes out, you should be properly compensated.
So now the question remains, what is the action plan on climate change from your political party?
The action plan is what I've explained to you. That Nigeria as a state has signed some bilateral agreements, with the rest of the nations of the world. We have to look at that and review properly and bring it to the level that we can understand and we can participate actively. But climate change is not what happens in the global communities alone. It starts from here, from home.
Okay, so you mentioned security earlier, and
Yes.
we're going to that security question.
Yes.
And although security operations are covered But we still need to talk about it.
Yes.
And in that regard, we would want to ask you if you can, in principle, tell us what exactly the structure you have, your principle now. That's
Yes, I
Dr.
understand. When we talk about the
Yes.
party, the campaign, we're talking
So
about.
how do you intend to
Well,
put to rest the security challenges and allay the fears of citizens living in those regions, those troubled regions?
Let me share some few core areas for us. You know that distinguished Senator Rabi Musa Kwankwaso was a Minister of Defense. So he has the experience, he has the knowledge. He knows what is needed, what are the things that is needed. Like I said, you start from ground zero sometimes, maybe not exactly ground zero. We are going to increase the personnel, the military personnel and the police personnel to 1 million from where we are now. I guess we have about 200 and something thousand or 300 and something thousand in the other. And of course, the paramilitaries. Number one thing is we believe that all of the ungoverned spaces in Nigeria, we must put it to use. And it goes to that agricultural community we're talking about and some other things. Some of these ungoverned spaces that are supposed to be occupied by legitimate operations that are not. It could be industries, it could be manufacturing, it could be farms, and it could be housing estates. That's number one. But we felt that it is the political will that stays on top of the pyramid. That if the political will is there and is clear and you engage the communities, you handle your intelligence properly, and you allow synergy between all of the security personnel, we're going to do much better within a very short time. If you look at it. So that's what our plan is talking about.
We'll take you up on that as time progresses.
Yes, we will.
Yes, and so let's go into your internal politics now,
Yes.
your internal politics as in your party. There are speculations that your party is going through some internal crisis, and we hear that your principal is not really keen on resolving this brewing crisis. What exactly are the issues?
Well, it's very unfair to say that, for anyone to say that, because distinguished Senator Rabi Musa Kwankwaso, when you talk about leadership, and leadership by example, I give it to him. And what does that mean? A leader that is objective, that is accessible, that wants to live by example, that can be mentored to thousands and millions of people, that has an open mind and that has open, hands, and that listens and wants to hear what you have to say. And if you have a superior argument, that's willing to go along with you. As far as the internal crisis, I do not think there is any internal crisis per se, and I will tell you why. In Bauchi State, for instance, we have a person that has gone against the principles of the party and was suspended. And then he will go out and use social media. Social media is very good. It can be very good, but it can also be very bad. And begin to come up with some nonsense on social media is not acceptable. So it's not that we are not willing. We want to the last person, to the last member of our party. We appreciate them. We listen to them. Like last Friday, my principal did a Zoom meeting, and we had a lot of people. If nothing else, let's talk to one another. Let's share ideas. Let's hear our principal. Let's look at the direction that he wants us to go. So for me and for the party, there's nothing like internal struggles or internal fighting.
Okay, so there is this talk about NNPP not having structure in the Northeast. I mean, these are questions yes, these are questions that we need to ask, because these are things out there. You need to clarify. You need to give clarity to these, these questions.
Well, sometimes, just like I said, people just come up with some careless contents. All of the positions, from the president to the last person in the state assembly, we filled all those positions. Those are people, and those are people that are working for the party, and those are people working to win elections. Those are not ghosts. Now, the other aspect of it is that we are continuing our cross country. We've gone to every state but one, including FCT. And each one of that, you need to come and see the crowd. You see, distinguished Senator Rabi Busako is not somebody that is media frenzy and believes that the people are the one that owns the voter's card. They will be the one to determine the next election. And we go from village to village, from township to township, not only the city center. We go by road.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier ghosts. And that word ghosts also came into play, you know, in these same speculations and accusations. They said out of the 16-member executive committee, you only have 4 that are active members. How would you respond to that?
Active members of what?
Of your party.
Active, are they talking about committees?
Yes.
That's not true. That's not. We have 12 committees. We have a group of senior special advisors. We have a group of heads of departments. Everybody is expected. Look, now we have few days to elections. We are not going to be, you know, perambulating, if you will. All the committees are working. All the committees have their part to success, to mobilizing voters towards the elections. So if somebody is here and there and says he doesn't hear, he doesn't know, look, if you ask, even the Bible says you should ask, and it shall be given to you. So this is not the time for anybody to stay out there and start to complain. This is the time that we all need to roll up our sleeves and mobilize, like our principal is mobilizing. As I'm speaking to you, he's on his way to Ogbomoso. People are waiting for him. What time is it? About 10 o'clock? People are waiting for him in Ogbomoso in Oyo State. So if you have people sitting down there since 6, 7 o'clock until 10 o'clock and waiting for their leader, so what else do you expect?
Okay, so how do you react to that alleged the camp of members? And this is amounting to 620,000.
Where do
members.
they get? How many people are in Bauchi State? How many people?
Across board.
No. Where do they get the number? You see, the problem is that sometimes the media.
I'm glad you hear of this.
We know those people. How many people resides in Bauchi State? I didn't say the city of Bauchi. And then you come, you say 2 million, you say 600, you say all kind of crazy numbers. You know what I say? Let them, if they have something to offer Nigeria, let them get to work and get off their lazy hands and stop telling people, you repeating the same old news. Nigerians, on a serious note, we need a focused leadership. We need someone who understands what's going on the street. We're at the point that we need a very serious-minded person who is capable and who has the capacity to lead this nation. It is not a joke. It is not a joke by any means. So what I am saying is that the media themselves, instead of them to investigate a little further, you read on social media like I read, you should have more information than I as an ordinary person. And I'm not trying to put it on you. And when they see, you know that terrible things, trends, terrible things. If you put serious information out there, go and watch how many people will read it.
But that's the reason why you're here.
Exactly.
To also
to clear the hair.
Debunk some of these allegations.
Yes.
And one other very, very worrisome accusation that has been made is that your principal is not very, very keen on, you know, being #1 citizen. He's just using that as a bargaining chip, you know, to...
I will use his word. It's absolute nonsense. That's what he said.
That's how you responded to that.
On one of your sister stations, he said it's absolute nonsense. And I believe it's absolute nonsense. And I'll tell you why. There is no party or candidate that has gone across Nigeria like we did. We've gone almost 500 local government. Just look, as an individual, just imagine what it takes to plan, to go, to come out of it. We've gone to places that say, oh, for security issues, you can't go in there. We went and we came out. You understand? Then number 2, my principal took his time. We sat down together, about 12 of us. We put down the blueprint. He read it line by line, paragraph by paragraph. That is participation. That's leadership by example. So nobody wrote that document for him. We wrote it together. Of course, somebody had to lead, you know, the team. Now, apart from that, if you look at how much he has invested in terms of money, in terms of resources, in terms of people, in terms of network, I mean, who does that for a joke?
As on a final note, if peradventure your principal doesn't really, emerge as number one, are there plans to merge with other parties? Are there prospects?
Look, our focus is to win this election, and we are going to win it on the first try. On the first basis. And we are going to, at the first time, the first phase, the first stage, whatever you want to call it, we are determined, we are focused, we are concentrating. Nigeria needs a leadership that believes in fairness and justice, a leader that is willing to understand and take their interest and say, look, I want to be selfless. I want to live for what I believe in.
So no plans for merger?
Look, we don't have any talks of merger. We don't have any plans for merger. We have plans to win this on the first instance. And
Great.
That's it.
And on that note, we'll take a break and we'll be right back.
All right.
The ballot will be back.
Thank you.
As is the tradition on the ballot, Honorable Folashade Aliu will be presented with 4 key national targets, with each offering 3 options of to be or not to be. And this is within a timeline of the 4 years that is, carved out for any number 1 citizen who becomes the president. So, in accordance with the Constitution, of course. So, let's begin. And the first one will be on energy sufficiency. Do you think that is realistic, unrealistic, or?
It is realistic.
Realistic, okay. And so we'll move on to the next one. This is really quick. This is the second one now is uninterrupted power supply. Do you think you can achieve it within the next 4 years if you're elected?
Using alternative energy realistic.
Realistic?
Yes.
Great. And then third question is ending insurgency and banditry.
Very realistic.
Very real.
Very
I like that that qualifier.
Very, yes.
And the final one is the double-digit GDP growth.
It is realistic.
It is realistic.
If you put the right people in the right places, it is realistic.
That's a conditional one there.
As we are prepared to put the right people in the right places, it is very realistic.
Okay, so on that note, I want to say thank you.
Thank you very much for
Thank you so
having me.
much for coming on the ballot tonight. I would like to also thank everyone out there who has listened to the National Campaign Secretary for the New Nigerian People's Party, NNPP. Thank you so much for coming on the ballot.
If I can say a thing,
yes.
I want to say thank you for the voters' awareness and thank you for the party's participation. We need it, and the time is now. And everybody should go and do their civic duty.
Okay, great.
Thank you for having
me. And the clock is ticking. We do hope that you're counting down with us here on the ballot as the excitement builds towards February 25, which of course is the D-Day for the presidential elections. Tomorrow night is another day for the ballot, and I'll be here, God willing, with another guest and another political party to discuss their plans for Nigeria. I am Fekla Wilkie. It's been a pleasure. Bye for now. 10 hours to the D-Day, and as the clock ticks, so does our interest peak. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Fekla Wilkie and we are reaching you live from Abuja. This is the ballot. It's great to have you join us tonight. For the next couple of days, I will be standing in for the regular host of the ballot, Nandi Odipo. And tonight, we'll be having an interesting conversation with our guest on the show. But before we get to that, let's bring the news highlights for today. led by civil society organizations, ensuring a seamless process before, during, and after the general elections. In getting it right, European Union Observer Mission deploys support team to Nigeria on long and short-term basis ahead of the elections.
With a repository of accurate, simplified, and concise information on the electoral process to improve.
Eye on Nigeria as the 2023 general elections tops agenda at the ECOWAS first extraordinary session in Guinea-Bissau. And tonight we seek definitive answers from a political party and their chances of success at the polls. And with just a few weeks to the 2023 general elections, effective observation of the process in engendering a free, fair and credible elections has become imperative. This has inspired a roundtable conversation amongst critical stakeholders chaired by Yaga Africa. The roundtable talk also had representatives from other civil society organizations.
Concise information on the electoral process to improve turnout as well as the quality of public participation.
The APC campaign train makes a stop in Uyo as the presidential candidate Bola Ahmed Tinubu urged electorate in the state to vote in his favor, assuring the repositioning of the country for greater prosperity.
We will be the deep sea ball.
And still on the 2023 elections, the European Union Observer Mission on Nigeria's general election has deployed 40-man long-term team to support Nigeria to achieving credible elections. Provisions has also been made on a short term with addition of another team towards the success of the elections.
Characteristics, and we are cognizant of all of those characteristics.
All eyes seem to rest on Nigeria as the country goes to the polls this month. Considering its big brother role in promoting democracy and good governance in Africa, it is no surprise that the country's election tops the agenda as ECOWAS Parliamentary holds its first extraordinary session in Guinea-Bissau.
Tirelessly to ensure that there is peace. First of all, there is peace in Nigeria. Number two, there will be a free and fair.
And now let's move on to the main business of the day. And my guest is a representative of one of the leading